All right, welcome to another episode of The More You Know. And by the time that this episode is out, I am just turning 24. I am officially an old man. But today I'm joining with Sylvia Smart, and she's here to make me feel better about aging. Sylvia, can you give us a brief introduction of yourself?
Yeah, but first I have to say happy
Thank you,
birthday.
thank you.
And if you think being 24 makes you an old man, well, I got another thing to tell you. So, what was your question?
just a brief intro
Sure.
of
So,
yourself.
thanks. Yeah. Hi, my name is Sylvia Smart, and I have passed the 24-year-old birthday by many times, and I live in Portland, Oregon. I am a six-degree black belt and run a martial arts school of my own and have taught empowerment self-defense classes to corporations and individuals and other organizations for way over 30 years. And I have an amazing husband and two amazing adult kids. And I have my own podcast and I love my friends and my community. And I feel like I say this almost every day. I'm the luckiest woman on planet Earth.
Why so? Why would you say so?
I would say so because of um the depth and the breadth of the adventure of my life and the depth and the breadth of the people in my life and the relationships that I have and the yeah, the joy that I experience along with all of the icky stuff too. But it's 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 a good life.
I definitely feel that. That's one thing that when I kind of try to like as I get older, I kind of think about like, yeah, I'm getting older, but I'm not the same person who I was when I was like 20 or when I was in my teens still. I have a lot more knowledge, I feel like, and I feel like my connections to people and the way that I interact with people have really matured in a way, and that's one thing that I do like about as you go through like ages is that you become more wiser, you become more knowledgeable of like things, and the people that you meet on your uh on your little adventure in life.
Absolutely. And also as you pass through the years, one day, Brian, you're gonna wake up and you're gonna be like, you're gonna look at your friend and you're gonna say, I've known you for 20 years. And that's gonna be, I swear, that's gonna be a day when you're like, "Oh my god, that's amazing."
That is crazy because I kind of think like on random days I'm just like, wow, I still talk to my best friend that I've known since like fourth grade, and then I think of all the years that is. I'm like, oh my god, like it's just astonishing how I could just know someone and maintain a relationship with them for that for just so long.
Totally, that's so precious, and think of all the experiences that you share with that person who knows you in that way, like, that is cool.
It is funny. It is funny. It's every time that I talk with them, it's always reminiscing of like the good times and just like old little insiders that only us know because it could be insiders from like elementary, high school, or even before that.
That's so cool.
What's if there's like one thing that you learned in your 20s, like what's the most important thing that you learned in your 20s before you entered the big 30s?
Yeah, got I've gotta say that here at 61, when I tell you that I'm the luckiest woman on planet Earth, and I know there are a lot of people who feel the same way, but when I say that, I often think back to a very pivotal moment on May 24th, 1984, when I was 24. Like, it was this totally intense moment where I had to make a choice. And the choice that I made on that day affected the entire rest of my life and how I have lived every moment and the choices that I have continued to make. And that one moment really affected the course of my life. And so, in thinking about the question that you just asked, I would say to someone in their 20s, I would say live your life to the fullest. And that sounds so trite in some ways, but what I mean by that is that each moment presents us with opportunities. And so to really be mindful of the choices that you make and what opportunities you open yourself up to. There's a lot of synchronicity in life, and use the resources that you have, the people who love you, the books you've read, the knowledge that you have, your support system, and really think things through and make choices that make good sense to you. They don't have to make sense to anyone else because it's your life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. I like one thing that I kind of got from that is that when you grew older, it sounds like you got more confident in your decisions in life. Um, that you start kind of like more self-embracing. I want to feel like
That's a
that's
good way to put it.
correct.
Yeah, trusting myself more and
Yeah,
more. Yeah.
yeah. Just believing in yourself more, having more confidence in your decisions, and not thinking about who it could affect, but if it's gonna benefit you and like if you like
I think that's really true. I have a saying that I really love, which is, "What you think of me is none of my business."
it.
And what that means is not that I go through life not caring about anybody. On the contrary, I care deeply about other people, but your opinion of me does not affect who I am or the choices that I make. I trust myself. You're right. I trust myself at this point to know who I am and where I'm going and what's important to me, and that's a really cool thing to have, especially when I think back to the 20s. Like, I don't know about you, but when I was in my 20s, especially my early 20s, I did doubt myself a lot. I had
Yeah.
grown up in and there were some hard moments. There was some deep pain and some trauma and some sadness, and I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't have guidance around how to handle it in healthy ways. So I slipped into some addictive behaviors with drugs and alcohol, and um, just I was going down a very rocky road. And by 24, it was surprising that I was still alive. I wasn't sure that I would make it that much longer because of the choices that I was making and where I was headed. I didn't care too much about myself. I didn't know what I wanted. I was confused and lost almost all the time. And I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know what to do. And so when I hit my 20s, especially the early 20s, I was living through a shitstorm. I don't know if you have to beep that out or
Oh no,
whatever, but
you're good.
okay. I
It
was
happens. It
I
happens.
okay. I had just created this state of chaos in my life that was that was worse and even more confusing than anything else that had happened to me. I just was digging myself into a really deep hole. And I don't think every 20-ish year old has that same level of sadness and anger, but I do know that the early 20s are a time when we are questioning, who am I? What is this thing called life? Like, what does it mean? And where am I going? And what do I want? And who am I? And what's important to me? Like, does that make sense to you? Do you sometimes feel that way?
I definitely, yeah, I can definitely say that even yeah, in my 20s and even to like to this day, I still question myself of like, who exactly am I? I definitely have found myself as time progressed, but that question still lingers in my head because there's a lot of things that I want to do in life still that I'm making an effort to, but I'm not fully implemented in, and it just still makes me question it every single day. And for me, one message that I do like to get across to people is that no, I think that regardless of your age, that it's always going to be okay if you don't know who you are yet in life or what you want to do in life yet. I think I mean, like, yeah, I think the pandemic is a good example of people kind of questioning like who are they and like what do they want to do in life, because either that, unfortunately, if people have lost their jobs during this, they may be reconsidering a career switch, and that's perfectly okay. And I know that people that are considering that are older than us right now. So even like in people in their 20s, I always like to convey the message that I think it's always okay to not feel bad about where you are in life and just
On
to.
the contrary, I'm so with you. Where you are at this whole 20s, like I would say all of the 20s, developmentally, it is totally appropriate to be asking yourself these questions like, "Who am I?" Because how are you gonna find out unless you ask, right? How are you gonna know unless you try stuff out? And you're gonna try things out that feel great and try things out that don't feel great. And until you allow yourself that freedom, there's no need to be perfect. In fact,
Mhm.
your beauty is going to come to you in the ways that you least expect, like when you're most vulnerable, when you're most feeling the most scared. Like these are the moments that show you who you are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I definitely agree. I 100% agree with that. One thing that in my 20s that I've done is I I'm big into fitness myself. So there's one year that I just entered myself into a bodybuilding show.
Cool.
And that was the most vulnerable I've ever felt, really, because the training and the diet regimen was horrendous. I was miserable. And then putting myself on stage, having judges just judge you on like how you look, was the most vulnerable that I've ever felt.
Oh my God,
And
mortifying.
mortifying.
Oh my
And
God.
honestly, it did kind of like mess me up, like how people perceive me, but it kind of put me out there. Like I'm vulnerable. Like that was a moment of vulnerability that I felt, and I don't know. It just changed my life in a lot of ways that kind of developed me as a person as I moved on in life.
That's so cool. That's such a great example of I mean, there are ways in which that matches May 24th, 1984 for me and how I continue to make decisions in my life. And I wonder if this is true for you too. The um the choice that I made, it was like I was at this fork in the road, and I could keep doing what I was doing and live sort of blindly, chaotically, confusedly groping through life just almost blindly. Or I could make another choice and I could take a deep breath and I could look at the thing that was the most scary for me and I could walk toward it. And I decided to walk toward the scary. And most often in my life since that day, those decisions to do the thing I was most afraid of, which means standing there up on that stage with those bodybuilding judges staring at you and judging you, right? It's the such a vulnerable thing to walk into fear to
Yeah,
see what adventure might await, what growth might await, what learning there might be, what development might there be, what mistakes will I make? I know I'm going to make mistakes. Is that okay with me? Yeah, it is now. It like, it's less scary now, but I still do make those choices. Like, what's the scariest thing? Okay, am I ready? Okay, deep breath. I'm gonna do that.
I definitely do agree. I've had a lot of those moments too when there's just two paths and one path is the scariest because you've never really done it before, and
Right.
and like for me, I often overthink of the worst possible outcome, and that deters me from going towards that path. And I find out also that when you do pursue the path that is the most daunting to you is when, yes, you'll be vulnerable and scared, but there's so many amazing opportunities and lessons that are learned after you pursue your greatest fears. Really, it tells you, like, it grows you as a person, grows your mind, grows your spirits, I want to say,
Yeah,
and just makes you more confident in the future. Some At some point that lessons learned will make you more confident, I feel like.
absolutely. Because each time any of us trusts ourselves, like, goes into that dark, scary place, makes the choice to step out on that stage or to show up for that person or to, choose the adventure, the rockier road, the less easy path. Each time we do that, we build courage, we build strength, we build resilience, and we build this knowledge base where we can trust ourselves more and can show up in a more authentic way. And it's really exciting. Like, even though 61, I'm feeling pretty confident I'm entering into the last third of my life, pretty much. I I don't plan to live much past 90. I don't know. I mean, could I be 120? Maybe, um but that brings its own challenges, like, what does it mean to age? And what does it mean to have the skill set and the knowledge that I have? And how do I wanna share that? And what's the best way for me to reach others? And what kind of service do I wanna provide in my life to others? And what types of friendships and relationships do I want? What kind of mom do I wanna be at this point to my kids who are adults? Like, all of these questions, they're important to for us to ask, and unless we feel confident and comfortable that we can handle the worst that life throws our way, we might end up choosing the easier route, and it's maybe not quite as exciting.
Yeah, the the easiest route, I feel like, at any time is just going to be a walk in the park, and you're not going to learn anything, and you're not really going to grow. And as we talk about this, I feel like it's a good way to put it, as you grow, well, as you age, really. It's more about the experiences and the situations that you're put on, because both of our scenarios that we just talked about, it it did require us to come out of our comfort zone, and it showed that we really grown, and how it progressed us for the future and set us up for success, and just make us better in these types of situations.
Totally. So you have this experience that you can call up in your mind and your body, like all of those neurotransmitters, where you were standing up on that stage in your bodybuilder moment, right? Like, these people are looking at me. They are judging me. They're going to tell me their opinion about me. Like, you survived that, right? And you can call on that strength of knowing that you showed up in that moment, you made that choice, and you survived. Well, what else can you survive? Probably a lot.
Hmm. Yeah, and I feel like that like the judging aspect is something that a lot of people face to this day with social media too. but on like a
Mhm.
smaller scale in a way.
Yeah, that I can't imagine being your age and having social media to contend with.
I can tell you for me, like I was really big into social media like back in the day, but now I've kind of fallen off of the train. But I see like the effects that it has on people. Because there are people that just post on there, and if they get a certain amount of likes, they're good with it. But if they don't get a certain amount of likes, they delete it, and then oh, it's just so bad.
Yeah, I can't imagine actually relying on social media to fulfill your sense of value in yourself. And maybe that's not what's happening, but it sort of seems like sometimes that is what's happening, especially in the way that you just described it.
It's just that now people can make a living off of it now, and they think that, well, I feel like they think that if they don't get a certain amount of likes, brands or sponsors aren't going to see them. And
Mhm.
for some, social media and their following is like the best way for them to earn an income. And I think it's just a very toxic trade-off, I feel like.
Doesn't sound that nice. Like, it doesn't really like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, no judgment whatsoever. Like, we're all doing the best that we can, period. And this is a landscape that maybe I also don't really understand. And, um, so kudos to the people who can actually make a living off social media. I have no idea how they do that or what that looks like or anything, but I didn't even know it was like an income stream. That shows you how old I am, I guess.
Oh my goodness.
So I have a question for you in your I guess it's your 25th year coming up in going into your 25th year as a 24-year-old. What adventures are you coming up to? Like, what do you see in your future this year?
This year, I actually got a job in Ohio, so I
Oh,
will be
wow.
moving soon.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah, just it's a good way to start off the new year. I'm currently in Georgia right now, and then I feel like I'm going backwards right now because I'm going from hot and nice roads to
Cold and
snow
snowy
and
and icy.
cold, snowy, and icy, and really messed up roads. So I feel like I'm going backwards in a
Yeah.
way, but I am excited for it. I am from Michigan, so going
Mm.
to Ohio as a Michigander, it's kind of weird because, like, you know, the little rivalry between the two in like college
Mhm.
and like college
Mhm.
football.
Yep.
But I think it's gonna be fun. It's a new adventure for my girlfriend and I. Unfortunately, during like because of the pandemic, we weren't able to do as much in Georgia as we wanted to because everything was shut down really.
Yeah.
Because honestly, like right when the pandemic was like starting to ramp up, like the week before everything started shutting down, I told myself and I told her, I was like, you know what? Every weekend we're gonna do something in like Atlanta, or we're gonna go see something new every single weekend. And then right when I said that, oh yeah, we're gonna have a little lockdown. Everything's going to close, and I'm like, are you serious? So I'm kind of bummed that I couldn't really explore Georgia as much as I wanted to. But living here, learning the culture here, I've definitely learned a lot about the South. Really, while I was down here, and I made some good friends at work and made good relationships here. But yeah, I feel like I'm going backwards just because of that. And
Just into the snow and ice.
yeah, and like as I was looking for like apartments, and I'm like, these apartments are so old and they're asking for so much. Well, like down here, everything's so new
Mm.
and like decently priced, and I was like, yeah, I can justify paying that for what I'm getting. But up there is like old and they want like a lot of money for it. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm kind of needy.
Maybe you can find something that's got a lot of character
Yeah, yeah.
for the for
That's what my girlfriend and I So she was like, if we can find like an okay place, we can like design it ourselves because there's like some design stuff that she saw like on TikTok
Yeah,
that we can like DIY little home makeover. So I was like, okay,
totally.
that's
Paint
fair.
does wonders. Pretty colors. So that's actually a really big step what you're undertaking by moving for a new job. That's that's huge.
Um, yeah, let's flip the question to you. In your 20s, how often have you really traveled or lived in a new place, and what did it really teach you, if you did?
Oh, I did. I did. I in my 20s I lived in Ohio, Yellow Springs, Ohio. I went to Antioch College. I lived in Philadelphia and I lived in Kansas City, Missouri, and I lived in Berkeley, California. Back in Philadelphia, I lived in Puerto Rico. I went to college there as well. And then I moved to Portland when I was 26, and I still live in Portland, but I love to travel. So I have traveled many places. Um, but in my 20s, I really loved this concept of moving to a new place, making new friends, starting all over. To me, that was a part of this concept of figuring out who I was because
You
each
sound like
time
me.
each time I
This is me
moved,
early in my 20s.
is it yeah, like each time I moved, I got to be like, okay, what part of myself do I want to embrace? What part of myself do I want to share with new people? What sorts of things are on my horizon and how do I want to experience those things? And so actually picking up and moving gave me the opportunity to try a lot of things out. So yeah.
I definitely felt that. When I was graduating college, for me, I wanted to get out of Michigan because I was like, there's so much out there to like explore. I want a fresh new start where like people don't know me and I can make new types of friends. And that's kind of how I still kind of am too. Like, even though, well, for me, I kind of want to stay in the Midwestern area because I found out how expensive it is to fly home and to
Yeah.
travel home. So I'm
Yeah.
like, I can save myself the money and I'll suck it up and drive home.
Right.
So that would be better for me. But like just exploring new areas that's not your home state is one thing that was really big for me. And I love it. I love it. I love seeing the different stores that you can get when you're not in the Midwest. Like down here in the South, there's Publix. Um, there's
Woohoo!
Publix here.
Publix.
There's Publix here, and there's no Meyer here, and then there's Chick Fil A's everywhere. And I'm like, in Michigan, there's like two. For me, yeah, it's just a lot about like what kind of food can I taste down here? Like down here, barbecue,
Mmm.
unbeatable down
Yum.
here. And I'm
Yep.
like, I've experienced it. That's a good experience.
Yeah. That's great. And you know what? You were saying that you didn't get to do a lot of things in Georgia, but you can go back and visit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and that's one thing that I was kind of like thinking about what is kind of bad about Ohio too, because like Georgia, there's so much surrounding states that are fun. Like we've been to Nashville once. We were going to go to North Carolina once, but the pandemic happened. But there's Tennessee, and then there's North Carolina next to Georgia, and then like Ohio. There's just like what? There's Pittsburgh. That's kind of it, really.
Right, but Pittsburgh is pretty beautiful if you like to raft or go on hikes. Like it's in a really beautiful part of the country. And it's
Yeah.
kind of a cool city, I think. I don't know. I haven't spent a ton of time there, so I don't know what I'm talking about really.
I
Oh.
gotcha. But Sylvia, it was a pleasure talking to you. Where can my listeners find you?
I am let's see, my podcast is called The Empowerment Podcast by Naga, and it's where I dump my 30 plus years of geeky research into the cycle of violence and teaching self defense as a way through trauma and as a way to prevent further violence and sexual assault. and it's like streaming a self-defense class onto your device. So it's called the Empowerment Podcast by Naga, and it's available through most of the podcast platforms that anybody would have on their phone.
Gotcha. Yeah, that sounds amazing. I'm definitely gonna give it a little listen to myself. Because right when you mentioned black belts, it immediately made me think of Joe Rogan. So,
Joe
and he's a
Rogan.
and he's a big martial arts person. And for me, I've honestly always wanted to learn it too. So I think this would be very beneficial.
Do it. Well, as someone who trains martial arts and teaches martial arts, I gotta tell you, it's this amazing path, not just physically, which apparently you really like, right, Mr. Bodybuilder, but also mentally and spiritually. It can give you gifts that you can't even imagine. It's a really cool thing to try. So maybe in Ohio you find a cool school.
Let's hope.
Maybe you and
Let's
your
hope.
girlfriend do it together because it's fun to do with. That's where I met my husband.
Really?
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, we will definitely give it a little visit. But
All right.
Sylvia, it was amazing talking to you. You have so much knowledge and experience that I think you really made me feel better about uh, turning older. Really, um,
Yeah. Happy
makes me look at it.
birthday.
Thank you.
And just, yeah, remember, like, a lot of it is acceptance, I think, of just taking a deep breath and accepting what's actually really happening and figuring out how you're going to handle it because you can do it. You
Thank you.
stood on that stage with those judges looking at you.
Oh God.
You can do it.
Oh, I appreciate it so
You're
much.
awesome. I hope you have a really, 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 really lovely birthday tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you. Means a
Welcome.
lot.
Lovely
All right.
chatting with you. Thanks.
Same with you.
Take care.
You too.
Okay.
All right, and that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed this show of The More You Know. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating this podcast on Apple Podcasts. It'll certainly help me out in the algorithm, and be sure to subscribe or follow to The More You Know on your favorite podcasting platform like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts, or any of your favorite podcasting apps. And lastly, if you would like to contribute to The More You Know, you can head over to anchor.fm// The More You Know Pod and contribute any monetary value to help the quality of the show, and in the future bring on some more interesting guests. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate all of my listeners, and I hope you guys have a wonderful week.